Tech family, today I'm going to share my experiences with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, an excellent device, but one that I believe was completely overhyped on launch, and that you should really think twice about before purchasing or default purchasing, as many Apple buyers do. If you're new here, a little about me. I'm completely unbiased when it comes to tech. I use the best device at the time for the job that I'm doing. I'm currently a big fan of Apple's laptop range and have both their MacBook Pro 14 and 16 M1s. But a couple of years ago, when they had their Intel Butterfly keyboard laptops, I wasn't. And these devices were all purchased by me independently of Apple. There is a Patreon link down below if you'd like to support the channel to help me do this. But if you aren't able to financially help, don't worry, just take a moment to click the subscribe button if you haven't already. That alone shows your appreciation for the effort spent making these videos, and as I always say, it will make my mother very proud. But let's turn back the clock. I was in India, walking down the streets of Bangalore, and I tripped on the pavement and dropped my beloved Samsung S21 Ultra. If you live or have been to Bangalore, you'll know the sidewalks can be pretty rough. Anyway, I dropped the Ultra many times before and it had never been damaged, but this time things were different. There was a massive crack across the screen and the phone started to stop responding to my touch. Guys, if you travel to a mobile dependent country and you don't bring any local currency like I didn't, bring a second phone as a backup, as finding your way around can be scary without one. As luck would have it, before I left, I'd ordered the new iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max to review on this channel. I was looking forward to trying Apple's latest, as I had been an Android user since my iPhone 7 Plus back in 2016. Anyway, when I got home, I eagerly unboxed my iPhone 14 Pro Max, and after several weeks of solid use, here are my thoughts. On the positives, the screen is stunning. It's so crisp and immersive. I honestly found myself just walking across roads into oncoming traffic as I was distracted by the video I was watching. The sound from the speakers is excellent, noticeably better than my Samsung S21 Ultra and S22 Plus. And the device, it just feels so solid and premium. You feel just proud holding it. And the phone, it is fast. Loading and switching between apps was super quick, scrolling insanely smooth. Definitely felt faster than on my Android phones. And the camera, as expected, is excellent, straight out of the box. The colors look natural and they don't look as saturated as they do on my Samsung phone's default camera app. When it comes to Apple's ecosystem, the iPhone fully unlocks it. Seeing calls pop on my MacBook Pro 14 and being able to choose whether to answer them there or on the phone is super cool. iMessage and FaceTime, they really are great and so easy to use as they are so tightly integrated. And the speed and security of Face ID unlock is very welcome. My Apple Powerbeats Pro earphones started working like they should have for the last 2 years. I took them out of the case, bam, they were connected to the phone and working. With my Android phones, they would occasionally just not connect or disconnect. So, as you can see, I think this is a mighty nice device, but here's why I believe it's overhyped and you should really give Android devices a look before you buy. Firstly, with its solid construction comes weight. With my kickstand case, which I believe is a must to make the most of this phone, it weighed in at over 290 grams. And that's the same weight as an iPad mini, which has a much larger 8.3-inch display. And because the weight to size ratio of this device is so high, it definitely feels heavy to hold. By the way, I'll post a link to the case I recommend in the description below. When you combine the weight with the fact that Apple continues to place the back button in the top left corner of the screen, it means you frequently need both hands to operate this phone, as the back button is one of the most frequently used functions on a phone. Android devices have this button placed conveniently bottom right where your thumb is. Next, connectivity is a disappointment. You've still got the proprietary Lightning port, which has a max transfer rate of USB 2's 480 megabits. USB 2 was launched in April 2000. This device not having USB-C is a disgrace on so many fronts. Pretty much all other high-end devices are now using USB-C with faster charging and data transfer speeds. Why do I have to have a specific cable just to charge some of my Apple devices? And I say some, because many Apple devices have USB-C. In fact, they were one of the first major companies to ditch USB-A and adopt only USB-C on their 2016 MacBooks. It's wasteful and bad for the environment that we have to use this stupid proprietary cable instead of being able to share the cables that our other devices use. Apple has this whole page on social responsibility and what they're doing for the environment. Forcing us to use this stupid cable negates it. And when it comes to Wi-Fi, the phone doesn't support the latest and faster Wi-Fi 6E, which introduces the faster 6 GHz band. Wi-Fi 6E is rolling out in almost all routers being released. This is Apple's most expensive phone and was launched in the second half of 2022. Wi-Fi 6E should be in here. Samsung had it in their premium devices from the beginning of this year. So enjoy waiting around to get those large photos or video files that this phone is capable of taking off the phone and onto your computer. Next, the advertisements. You are literally paying top dollar for Apple to advertise to you. The advertisements in Apple's App Store are so big and in your face, more so than on Google's Android Play Store. Plus, I'm constantly being berated and pushed into using Apple's apps like Siri. I don't want to use Siri. I already use Amazon's Alexa at home. I don't need another virtual assistant. And talking about Amazon, with their Kindle Fire devices, their devices are subsidized because they are using them as opportunities to advertise to you. Not here, of course, with Apple's iPhone. Next, if you use a PC laptop or computer, you can't use iMessage. On the flip side, that's not the case if you have an Android phone. Google has a web version of their text messaging app that you can use on PC or Mac. It's super convenient. Yes, it isn't quite as polished as iMessage, but it works. You will be forced with this device to respond to messages on your phone if you have a PC laptop. And let's talk about usability. I know this may be blasphemy to say, but I don't find navigating iOS as intuitive as Android for many reasons. I find having the 3 primary buttons for operating the phone always available at the bottom of the screen where your fingers are, this is on Android that is, more usable than having to use gestures. If you haven't used an Android phone, those are the buttons to switch between apps, go home and go back. As mentioned, on iOS, the back button is at the top of the screen. Even Apple's own App Store doesn't adhere to the top left standard. In this case, I have to click the X button top right to go back. Not convinced? Take a look at the pull-down quick settings menu on Android. It's more useful than the one on iOS, and it's easier to drill into for more fine-grained control. On iOS, it's more cumbersome to drill into, and some settings like sound, you can't drill into at all. You need to open the Settings app and navigate to the sound settings. Doing this is much easier on Android. I can simply click into the Wi-Fi settings from the pull-down menu itself. Plus, if I'm watching a movie on full screen mode, on Android, to see the time, I just access the quick settings menu. On iOS, it's a different gesture to see the time than to access the settings. Why do I have to think which gesture to use to access something so simple, like I want to control brightness and look at the time? Even rearranging apps on the home screen is honestly a pretty painful experience on iOS when compared to Android. Go to a store, try rearranging apps on an iPhone, then try on an Android phone. You will know what I'm talking about. On the iPhone, it's literally like playing a game where you hope the app lands in the right place. Whether you prefer Android or iOS is clearly subjective, and as I mentioned, I feel iOS is more fun and satisfying, but Android, it just feels more productive. And when it comes to the always on screen, as many have mentioned, it's too bright and is distracting. You can't control brightness, so I just turned it off. Before I wrap, a couple of items. Dynamic Island versus Notch. Island is more useful, but it does get in the way of full screen movies. Battery life, it was good. Very good in fact, but in real world usage, not that much better than my Samsung S21 Ultra from last year. Also, pricing in the USA was about $100 more expensive than Samsung's excellent S22 Ultra from this year, but it wouldn't surprise me if you see heavy rotating sales starting on that device. And honestly, if you're like me, and want a large screen phone but want one that is substantially lighter that also has good battery life, take a look at Samsung's Plus phones. It's substantially lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro Max and even lighter than the iPhone 14 Plus. Its main downside is that it has a lower resolution display, resulting in around 400 pixels per inch. The iPhones have more than 450. You probably won't notice that though. That being said, it has a faster refresh rate display which the iPhone 14 Plus doesn't, which you probably will notice. At the end of the day, as I said, this is a mighty nice device, but it does not deserve the hype put on it. It's a heavy phone that more often than not requires two hands to use, and it's missing a very important feature being USB-C fast charging and connectivity, which it really should have for the price. It is more of a minor increment over the iPhone 13 Pro Max, and I'd strongly recommend you take a good look at Android phones before purchasing this one. You might be pleasantly surprised by how usable, lightweight, and better priced they are. Well, that's all for today, folks. As my regular viewers know, I'm not a mobile phone specialist, so let me know how I did in the comments below. I learn a lot from you guys. Till next time, go do something awesome with your day, and I will catch you later.